So in this present moment of here and now, Sawubona.
Yabo Sawubona. And maybe I begin there with this amazing word, because it comes alive in me, not as a word only from a language tradition, which is the Zulu tradition, but Sawubona means we see you. And it is really a word that has been restored in a language to help people come to the deeper understanding of what sight is for human life. Within that tradition of the Zulu people, there was an initiatory wisdom to wake up the sense power of seeing, so that people can move their sight from just the everyday world to this higher level of visioning, what we call prophecy, the prophetic realm, the realm where reality is, we say, possible before it becomes probable, before it becomes actually real. And between every human being, there's so many other possibilities that we don't see because of different influences in our own sight power, in our own, say, consciousness. And this word is a kind of reminder to try to give the effort and the agreement to see more between us. Because when I look at you and you look at me through we say eye contact, the eye contact of the sense perception, seeing, it becomes eye contact with the I being in me and the I being in you. So we become hosts for an agreement that if I see you and you see me, we see the future, or we could see the future. Because the future is really a creative power within the human consciousness field to say, let there be something between us that will allow these other forces to incarnate, to come into manifestation. And I was asked to use this word to bring it into more of our everyday consciousness by an elder in the Zulu tradition in South Africa. He passed last year, March, at 98 years old, but he has been a holder of different levels of vision because he developed this initiatory power to see beyond the everyday normal range of sight, and to awake up into sleep, to see sleep as only a dimension of consciousness. So he's been able to wake up in sleep, or wake up in dreams, and wake up in other states of consciousness, because the I witnesses us sleeping, and the I witnesses us doing all kinds of unconscious things, but does not interrupt. It just allows our freedom to choose how we engage reality. So over the last 20-something years, I've been working with Sawubona and the agreement power within that to be able to develop my own sense of vision for life, for light, for love, for interaction between human beings and others, and to understand our world, to see into the conflicts and challenges of our time. And so my work has been in phenomenology. My study has been in phenomenology, to ask the questions of reality. What is happening and why? What is behind what we are all observing in our present realities? And practice discernment around what we can choose to do to bring a better harmonics between these different states of consciousness. And that's been my practice for going on 30 years now in medicine, in science, both natural science, but also esoteric science, and in consciousness development, how different stages of consciousness could experience reality in becoming. And I draw from many traditions to support that. A lot of friends and mentors who have been on that path of development before me and contribute to my own process with it. In the present research, of course, I'm interested in climate consciousness, not just climate change, but climate becoming, meaning that we could still participate in what our climate has always been, a field of ecology between other entities of life, mineral, plant, animal, and the subtle realms of, we say, the astral world, the world where other kinds of creative forces, magnetism, light, electricity, these forces that we now draw for our modern technologies, all of this coming from our environment. And forecasting what is on the higher realms of this environment is for me an important area of work. And one of the fields that is becoming far more conscious now that technology is emerging is in the field of currencies. And so I've been working on the futures of money, looking into the unconscious agreement that makes money what it is in our current world, and then the conscious factors that are supporting communities to develop their own currencies for how they want to live. And I'm just using the word currencies as the processes of interactions and exchanges that allow us to raise awareness around how we want to be and share our world. And many communities are working on those factors. There are about over 8,000 currencies in the world supporting different communities to navigate the complexities of our time. But there are many more that will come as a result of blockchain technologies and other things that are emerging. But behind that, for me, is still consciousness. What do we know? How do we want to share what we know? How do we liberate ourselves from unconscious forces so that we bring more conscious attention to the healing that can support how we go into the world and work and live? So this is a bit of the background of my work. In the conversation that we've had in preparation for this time, one of the areas of interest was still around seeing, but not sight alone, but intuitive awareness, or even inspirational awareness, or imaginative awareness for strengthening the will. Because we have come to a very complex time, as many of us will understand. There are many factors in the world that people are doing and being affected by, and we think someone else is causing it. And we can point to many who might be causing different things, but the paradigm itself is causing it. The paradigm that so many of us have inherited is causing the world to show up this way. Meaning no one can do something without some form of knowledge. knowledge of self, knowledge of the other, or knowledge of the world in some way. So knowledge is causing what is happening in the world, not just action. And sometimes knowledge could be so free that it enters into our lives through a precognitive state, a state in which we were just only taking it in. Right? This knowledge comes into me and I'm aware that it is causing me to be me. And so where does knowledge come from? And what are the earliest sources of knowledge that are still in someone inherited by our human consciousness? And we are unaware. And a lot of that knowledge comes from our environment. Meaning a place could make a person become themselves, even without someone else teaching them how to do so. And the deepest, earliest knowledge that is in the human being, in our deep, say, personal and collective unconscious, comes from our environment. Yeah, and it's surprising that the thing that are causing harm to our environment came from our environment. But we have held on to it so long unconsciously that we don't know how to release those forces into other states of knowing and being that could transmute it, transform it, and bring it into more freedom, more creativity, more responsibility, more accountability, and a higher level of culture as a result of that. So there were ancient traditions in many, many cultures for the human being to go through initiation that had to do with the earth forces, with water forces, with fire forces, with nature forces, with mineral forces. These forces were part of the body that had to be restructured and put into, say, initiatory wisdom. And if we didn't, the body will create on the psyche, on the soul, mind, reality, an imbalance. Because apart from the physical body, which holds the mineral reality of memory and our ancestral memory, we have a feeling body that's made up more of sense organs that are trying to mediate current states of being, current reality. We want to be here now through our feelings. But the body says, I want to be with what I have inherited. So in the physical body, I just talk about the mineral body, the pure physical body without the life in it. It's like any place where we are standing. It's just bringing things down, bringing things closer to what mineral does. Wait for something to happen. Wait for life to happen. So every place is waiting for life to happen. And what is life? Plant, animal, human, as we know it in our current civilization. But the mineral substance is so old, it's so formed, it's so committed to being itself, it doesn't interact unless something else moves it towards interaction, some force, some chemistry, some willpower. But imagine the body carrying that awareness. I don't want to change. The deep, deep memory. Because I'm born of this stuff. I'm born of this place, this physical earth, and maybe some particular part of the physical earth, and I want to be that. And then life says, no, you got to move to somewhere else and grow into the light, the life and the love that's around you. So how do I do that? How do I move history into this current feeling that I'm here for something more than just what I was in the past? How do I come to that? This is the phenomenology of the human being, because the human being we carry a time-sensitive consciousness. We want to move from the past to the present and to the future, which is even harder to do. It's easy to just come to the present. Like, okay, I'm here, but I'm not going to be worrying about what happens next. But so much of our life now is about what happens next, what happens with the conception we call future. How do we get to it? So this modern human space of consciousness, and well, it's the modern contemporary aspirations in our consciousness, is to take up time powers, take up the power of time in consciousness. And where can we find that? Where is time being carried? And if we look at a human baby and we're just looking at them, they're moving between time as eternity and here, because their body is pulling them down, pulling and pulling and pulling on all of this creative power to say, come into me, because I was just born. So there's still more of me that has to show up. And the baby is just amazing powers of incarnating time all the way from the future through now to the body. Because the body wants to be completely on earth, within the ecology of the earth. Magnetism, at the core of this human being as an infant, is just the power to bring in all that has been learned by human civilization into its unconscious. So between 0 and 3 years old, the child is just living in a world of total recall of everything that has been within human understanding, but it does not come into consciousness because that has to be developed. It just goes into the deepest, deepest region of being. And wherever we're born in this world, in this physical earth, wow, we're storing world history. And then the trouble is, how do we remember it? How do we come back to being all here, all 7 billion plus, all here at the same time, to do one thing, celebrate being on earth with consciousness flowing towards the future. And we've had all kinds of initiation traditions, all kinds of educational traditions, all kinds of philosophies and religions, and all that over thousands of years to help us remember. But we're trying to use knowledge that we've had only for thousands of years to remember things that we've had for millions of years, probably billions of years. Mineral has been around for billions of years, and it's stored somewhere in the deepest, deepest reservoir of human consciousness. And we've only had a few thousand of years to develop how to remember. We've remembered a lot, and we've actually been able to do a lot with some help from people whose practices are able to go very, very far into the personal and collective unconscious and bring us to higher states of civilization. Many, many have navigated into that experience. But we are at risk again of losing touch with the core power of human nature, which is to create consciousness, self-consciousness, to know the self that wants to come alive through these bodies. Current science puts it like we have five generations of ancestral memory stored in our physical body, meaning the life experiences of 62 other people, 62 other persons are stored in our body. Our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, our great-great-grandparents, and our great-great-great-grandparents. So those 5 generations are within us. But beyond that, the powers of the places where we've lived, are within us. And the biology process of metabolism, so when we eat food, this is like a little bit of homeopathy. The fraction of minerals and such that are in the food triggers the awakening of minerals that are within the deep, deep, deep memory. And we're trying to bring them alive by the homeopathy of digestion, assimilation, alchemy of the blood with qualities of substance in our foods and water and air. But that's for the body, homeostasis of the body, the life body. But the feeling body, which comes from a different environment, even beyond the earth, our feelings, connected with the moon and the sun and the rhythms of other planets within our solar system. We're not isolated from magnetism and electricity and light, because these other bodies circulating the earth and the earth circulating around them give us other kinds of moods and movements and influences in our dreams, in our aspiration, in our imagination. So we call them the archetypal world, the world that allows us to create. And the images that we are doing on Earth not only come from Earth, they come from other influences beyond the physical Earth as well. And this feeling body has become challenged because, too much technology is in between us and other intelligence. We don't walk as much, we don't talk as much, we don't sleep as much. we're not in enough darkness to see the stars. The cities are so bright that we can't actually see the other influences. We're not in nature as much. We're not in water as much. You know, if the rain falls, now we have umbrellas and such to protect us from the elements. These are like, we have now built a world around us to not be in nature and the cosmos as many of our ancestors used to be. And it's not that, you know, they were better than us or we're better than them. It's the fact that these environments are needed to touch our skin. It's needed to be as close to our feeling as possible so that we could experience electricity, not as something that is in their lights, you know, but in our cellular activity, to be able to have intimacy and possibility of aspiring for closer engagement with the life realm. These are attributes, and this is really why I study biology and chemistry and, you know, physiology, because I want to understand how could we bring all of this power of wisdom that is stored in us back into activity. So that is the trajectory of our invitation today. How is that experience for you? How are you becoming more alive in the world that you're in the places where you are, in the relationships that you share? What aspects of yourself gets triggered, remembered, stimulated to become a creator of the word I? See, feel, trust, love, you, you know, these words that we want to put in between I and you. So if I could say that the most simple thing matters, to say I and find the most constructive words to put between that and you. So if I just have I and you as two words, what could go in between that to say, to make a better world? Because that for me, that's how simple it is, but complex, but simple as the first word, just choose. So if I say, I love you, wow, that's a huge, huge creative thing in my life, because now I have to live up to what the word love means between me and you and do something with it. And I really, really love that word in between me and you, or I and you, and whatever. But I do it as an exercise. I put words in between these two because I'm responsible for hosting you. I'm responsible for having a better day wherever you are. I am taking personal responsibility that you have a better day. So how do I do that? How do I do that? And even though you're where you are, I hold a meditation every day for everyone, every day, everywhere, that they receive as much support from Earth, from all of these other influences to be themselves. And if I could do it, everyone can do that. Everyone can do that for everyone. It doesn't cost anything. 5 minutes. 5 minutes of dedicating time in the now to create an environment that someone else can feel. And this is the thing about doing it. People begin to feel it because it's magnetism. Magnetism is immediate energy. If someone needs it, guess what? They will pull it down from the environment because it's there. Just like we're pulling this Zoom call from the environment. There's nothing here other than electricity and magnetism and light, and we're having a conversation. Technology uses our environment better than we do because we depend on it now to mediate our environment. Yet the same thing that makes this picture real could make my imagination real and become more of a kind of truth in me, because this body is designed to make millions and billions of years of evolutionary powers accessible now. Everything that I am could make billions of years true. Wow. That's what excites me every day, folks. The human possibility of becoming. So is it time for some question now or interaction?
I don't know.
How much time do we have? Sorry.
I mean, how much time do you have? We said 45 minutes, but I would be happy if you finish off in a way that you like, and maybe we offer 5 minutes for questions or 10 minutes for questions. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm open for some interactions now. I feel like I've put a lot out there, and maybe some of it is really to just.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, we opened the space.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Just speak up.
Yes.
We hear you.
Thank you very much for a wonderful talk. And I just need to ask about the word that you said in the beginning, that saubona, because I didn't understand just the meaning of it, because I couldn't hear it somehow. So if you would just repeat it. And I was also thinking about evolution, and with this sort of seemingly linear way of storing knowledge, but I'm thinking that evolution has also gone back and forth and in different directions, and has had a very non-linear or different path in a way. I'm thinking, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you. For the first part of the question, saubona means we see you. And that's be the grammar of it. We see you. So if I say saubona, I'm representing me, my ancestors, and one can say every intelligence I can see through me to you. So it's actually a sense of I am not myself alone. I am a collective experience. And then the person says, Yebo, saubona, yes, we see you too. And the agreement actually creates something when two or more people share the word. The agreement, yes, I see you too, or we see you too, creates something. Energy is released. So the word brings people to be responsible for releasing an agreement into the world. It's just like if you say good morning, someone says good morning, and yeah, it creates something. I agree with the evolutionary process. Most times we think of it as just from the past to the present, future. But there's also in our human nature designed future memory, cells that only capture future. In the mitochondria, The mitochondria in our human cells live within the higher powers of the epigenetic world, meaning it's designed to attract light, free energy, unmanifested source energy. So in that sense, it's not evolution, but incarnation. It is bringing into the human being something that has never been formed before, light. And the intelligence of the light interacts with the intelligence of the mitochondria to transmute what has been inherited into now. So it's an energy transducer. It moves energy to different layers of consciousness. And as we go into deeper aspects of quantum science, we're discovering more and more about the cells in the human body, that they're all not just here, they're as just in space. They're holding a space for other properties of consciousness. So it's involution, meaning something coming in from the future, and future just means higher states of energy for me, and then creating a three-dimensional vortex that then creates matter and creates substance and then creates matter, and then we have a body that's maturing capacity. I hope that's helpful to your question.
Yes, thank you.
It's non-linear. It's more of a vertical vibrational field of currents. Some stay in the physical realm, some stay in the mental realm, and some stay in realms higher than that, vital realms. So around the physical body, one called an aura, there's so much more energy that does not come into the physical, but someone will feel you and say, I like you, or they don't know why, because you're storing another kind of field that attracts them for some other purpose of life. Meaning that we can co-create a future because we feel a positive charge from someone else. I'll give you a real simple thing. It's more complex than that, but that's how beautiful it is to ask what is it that the human being holds in stores, and where are we in time? We are actually in a very, very vast field of energy and creativity. So thank you for asking.
Any other kind of reflections? Anyone else that something comes?
Yeah, do take your time. There's no rush. If there's something that's still forming, just take your time with it.
So Orland, in the meantime.
Yeah, there's someone on mute for. Please go ahead.
Hi.
Headset.
Sorry about that.
Yes, thank you.
Just a question. You mentioned about something about the memory of the body of 5 generations. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Why is it 5 generations, and how did you come up with that research? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. For the last 20 plus years, I've been working with French engineer, physicists, whose research measures the quantum fields of, we say, ancestral memory. So we now have a methodology that can ask the body, what do you know about yourself? So we don't ask the mind about the body, we ask the body about the body. So just as if you put some electrodes on the body, we will know how certain organs are functioning through the electromagnetic currents that the body generates. Even people in law enforcement use the lie detector to know if the mind is lying and the body is telling the truth. So the body tells truth. The body is so truthful in what it knows about its nature through the chemistry of the body, through the electromagnetic fields of the body, and this is how we measure it. If you ask the body, is memory from your parents in you? It will say yes. So is memory from your grandparents in you? It will say yes. And it goes through the fields until it reaches that 5th generation. And after that, for some, it's still yes, for some, no. So in a general sense, it's been measured that majority of people carry 5 generations. The idea comes in a social experiment as well, what they call 6 degrees of separation. That if you can name someone in the field of life, there's someone that you know through 6 degrees of separation that knows that person, anyone in the world. This is really, one could say, an intelligence that the field that we call reality is not individually determined. It's determined by a complex structure of relational processes. And we all in this world are connected by someone. So these are social and scientific experiments that have been done for centuries, really, in understanding both the spiritual, psychological, and phenomenological connections of human life and the world. And current quantum science, the researchers are doing even more to understand. And like Joseph Campbell, mythologists developed the understanding that most of our cultures came from some of the same stories. Like in mythology, it's shared regardless of the culture that has never met before. So he wrote a book called The Heroes of a Thousand Faces. And if you read it, it says, everyone is telling the same story. Everyone is living the same religion. Everyone is living the same science and the same memory. Where does it come from? From what is stored in the human being, far beyond what we know in the mind. And different cultural things bring it up, and we call it science, we call it philosophy, we call it different things, but it's memory reconstituting itself into present realities. And we say memory is not just of something that happened, it's something that could happen. Meaning that in the mineral world, there's so much that could happen from it if we only understand what the mineral reality gives us. It gives us our civilization, it gives us how to think, feel, and create, co-create. So yeah, I know that through my work with this field called Ondevit. It's a science of over 40 years of working with the intelligences of the body and the power of the written word to recall energy and information that is subconsciously stored in the body. Thank you for asking the question.
Yeah. So I thought it could also be nice maybe to hear a little bit more about your daily practice and yeah, what engaged you at the moment.
Yes, in what I shared, that's my daily practice. My fundamental practice is meditative attention. So in giving attention to the activities that I am observing in the world, I bring it to a meditative level, meaning no judgment around what I'm observing. And it, almost like if I'm just doing meditation for myself, I do meditation with the world in activities. Because meditation is not a state of closing off the senses, but lifting them or purifying them to be able to have access to what is happening while it's happening. Because one form of meditation is to really, dissolve the sense perception and just stay in the witness space. But for me, I bring the witness space into my activity of action. So when I'm doing something, I'm doing it with consciousness that I'm actually choosing to bring love and light and life to what I'm doing. These three principles matter to my practice. So if I'm doing something, I do it with love, and that it could leave a quality of well-being between me and whatever I'm interacting with. If I'm bringing light, it leaves a kind of possibility for freedom. Meaning I'm not bringing knowledge, I'm bringing light, inspiration, imagination, intuition, so that someone else could choose how that could be used. And so we get freedom from allowing the imagination to be free enough to allow me to do something without wanting something back from it. So what I do in the world, I mostly give away energy to support something to come into well-being and come into balance, and to take harm and loss and those other things out of the world, to transmute them through my own feelings. So if I do something and it's hard to do, I don't judge it, so that I allow myself more will to be able to do it. And then at the end of the day, I take all of that into contemplation, visualization, reconciliation. The processes that my organs are designed for, they're not just designed to keep my physical body alive, they're designed to initiate my consciousness and prepare me for what I have to do for the future. And so I go through the day with certain moments of just rest because some things are really hard to do. And they impact my feeling life quite severely because I deal with, here in Los Angeles, a very traumatic environment. People are dealing with a lot of losses and a lot of pain, and a lot of trauma. And some days, yeah, I can only do one thing and then go and get a few hours rest to transmute it and bring it to another level where I could gain an insight as to why this thing happened and what could be done with the energy coming from it. I don't do the same thing every day. My days are so different each day. And I create availability. I schedule some calls like this one and other things, but it's never the same people every day, never the same context of work every day. Yesterday was ceremonial day because it was Dr. Martin Luther King's Day, anniversary day here in the United States. And so it was a national holiday. And so from sunrise, I entered into work around his intelligence of legacy, what is living still from what he spoke into the world, and how is it reaching the world? Do we need to do more for it to reach the world in ways that could still support us, which we need a whole lot, particularly here in the United States. So I was in some of those conversations. At the same time, one of my elders and dear friend, Malodoma Some, an elder from the tribal community in West Africa, had died in December. His burial ceremony was in the village in Burkina Faso yesterday. And so I was also in touch with them around my connection to that community of memory. Wow, what a day that was. When I went to sleep, it felt like I was in a totally another world because of the range of and ancestral energies that I work with, and shrines in different locations, and powers of psyche and mysteries of things. It was quite a big day. And yeah, I need a little bit more time to this morning to come into the come into the world. So yeah, this is a good start to meet you on this occasion of coming into today. The hardest thing, I think, for me is in my work is to develop work around how we transform scarcity. And that comes more from our economic experience with money. And most of the fiat currencies that we work with in the world have to be scarce in order to be valuable. And the capital system of enterprises is that people are forced to compete for jobs, scarce resources, and that's the problem in most of the world for what challenges our society. So my interest is, how do we experience abundance? What are the processes for people to experience free will, free interest, free interaction, and not the drive to compete and create a place where I accumulate more for myself and someone else right next to me is suffering. We have one of the largest homeless populations of people here in Los Angeles. If you go downtown Los Angeles, it looks like a refugee camp from anywhere where there's been a natural disaster or just, something far more civil, destructive, like war. These people look like they have been traumatized by war, and some of them have been traumatized by war since the Vietnam War. Imagine that in the streets, there are veterans from Vietnam, from Iraq, from Afghanistan, because they can't go back to just being normal. They have to have something in the culture to put them back in touch with a higher well-being after what they have experienced, and many can't. And for those who choose not to commit suicide, choose to not be part of their family life anymore, or they just walk out of society. And they just like being in the physical world, in the body. No constructs of what we call society. They just want to be in the streets where they're closer to nature, the stars, the earth. They sleep on the ground because it's actually far more comfortable for the soul to sleep on the ground with the elements pouring in over their body than in a house with electricity and refrigerator. Those things don't make sense when a person is trying to recover the deeper aspects of self. So yeah, I go downtown Los Angeles sometimes and just walk around a group of people whose powers of consciousness is trying to create something far more sacred, but no one spends enough time with them to understand what they're dreaming, because they're beyond the normal, we call normal society, and they don't want a job, they don't want these things that we compete for, and then we think they're mentally ill. And they might be from the trauma, but they're also from a level of the soul, the wisdom keepers of the culture. And so I interact with them to confirm with them that someone else understands, who may look like I'm, have a clean shirt on and had a shower this morning and had food to eat. But that's an assumption. Sometimes I go down there without food because I want to be within the common experience of what the body needs when there's nothing to eat or water to drink. These elements, as I said, are important. But more so, if you go down there with love, people will choose to be in conversation, and that's most important. People want to be understood, and they want someone to have a conversation with. And sometimes that's all I do. Have conversations, small, short interactions, and keep moving. It's like putting electricity in the right current of life. Please, Sebastian.
So you mentioned earlier, it's a bit of a jump from what you were talking about just now, but it's kind of related. You mentioned that you have like a meditative practice of being aware in action rather than in action when you're kind of like sitting and meditating. So I was wondering, how do you like convert or like how do you learn that ability to do it outside of meditation, but in life instead?
Yes, thank you for the question. I studied with a Goethean scientist, a phenomenologist, a German philosopher by the name of Friedemann Schwarzkopf. He was a mentor and dear friend. He wrote a book called Metamorphosis of the Given. That was his doctoral thesis. And when I was introduced to the book in 1994, he invited me to do research with him. He was teaching at the Rudolf Steiner College here in California. And as I said, he was a Goethean scientist, which meant he worked with observational techniques within nature and within the phenomena of the man-made world, conceptual designed world. And I studied with him for 13 years and helped co-write some essays and work that he was doing in research and observation. But I was bringing my own field of observation, which I was doing since I was about 5 years old. I had my own experiences as a child in witnessing things that could not be explained by, the world around me. And so I kept those things in my own field of interest. But what I discovered from his work and from the work that he brought in of Rudolf Steiner is that attention, when given concentratedly, creates intention, meaning I become aware of I'm giving something. And this giving is my spiritual activity. I'm giving myself to the world. So from my attention, I discovered that I am intentionally being myself. And as I give more intention, my attention gets stronger. And as my attention gets stronger, my intention gets stronger. So it's a kind of ladder of building higher and higher states of vibrancy of consciousness until all the prejudices are peeled away and I only have the phenomena of my spiritual observation of reality. And one can practice this just by giving attention without any judgment. Look at something, take it in for a minute, look at it again, take it into consciousness, recreate it in awareness, look at it again. And as I do these processes, I am dissolving and recreating reality as given. And a metamorphosis begins to happen. Changes begin to be revealed that can only be done when I take it into myself and release it freely. So this is the meditational activity with the logos, with the I. It's a different phenomena than the Eastern meditative tradition, which goes into the memory all the way to the source of the breath, which is amazing what the breath, where the breath goes in the inner journey of only doing that rhythm. So that rhythm is like the lemniscate, and not just the breath does that, the soul does that in sleep and waking as well. So, but in the attentiveness forces, more of the Western initiatory tradition and philosophical, is that how to transmute the ego, how to change the ego from being mine to being ours, to being a host for a shared reality. So the human baby does that. When a child is giving attention, it's taking in all that is the world and forming a superconscious faculty for language, for conceptual understanding of the world, for communication of every kind with others. So a child does that between 0 and 3 years old. And I do it now again. I learn what children do before they learn to speak. That's pure activity of spirit. It's hard to be a kid again after learning all this stuff about myself and the world. But to dissolve it and just behold the nature of reality, to just the nature of things, just the nature. I don't want the information about all this stuff. Just what is happening, the what is happening. And come back to my what is happening. what is happening to me when I look at something? What happens? I take responsibility for what's happening, change it, and create a chemistry for it, create meaning for it. So that's meditative observation. It's more than that, but I say that's what a bit of the practice. But there's a whole teaching of these European philosophers that Friedman's book, Metamorphosis of the Given, looked at 500 years of Western empiricism in consciousness. So he chose particular philosophers to show the progress of thinking in the philosophical structure that give rise to Western civilization, and the possibility that can go further with our intellectual consciousness through the philosophical realities, and then, of course, the phenomenological realities that we can observe with our thinking. So our thinking can be free of our thoughts. Our thoughts could be free of judgment and prejudices, and our actions can be fully love and light. So that's, and from the African wisdom traditions, their initiations are far more complex, but they don't tell you and teach you anything by words. They put you into ceremonial forces that the mind can create, and then nature does the rest. Nature is willing to give us her wisdom. And it's all around us. Wisdom is all around us, every day. I appreciate your question very much.
Maybe just mention the title of your book, Orland, so people could.
Yes, thank you. My book is called The Seventh Shrine. The Seventh Shrine, Meditation on the African Journey from the Middle Passage to the Mountaintop. It's a personal journey narrative, but it's also research around the experience of the African enslavement process. So I went into the soul event to understand what happened in those 400 years of the soul experience. And this was a research I did with this elder from South Africa, who helped with how I could observe that, not just history, but the phenomenology of when someone is going through such a crisis, what does the soul do? And the soul creates. So they created some other realities that will now come into the world. And so that's just part of my work yesterday, to still bring in those experiences. So the book kind of speaks about a little bit of how I do that and what are the possibilities for others doing it as well. So may I ask, are you in one course? This is one course that you are sharing, or different courses? Different, okay.
Yeah, you're in different years.
Different,
Yeah. I don't know actually, but I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all in different years, but everyone's in fine arts.
Okay. So Friedemann was a sculptor, painter, linguist, philosopher, a farmer. He took his meditation work into everything, and explored. A geologist, oh, there's so many things that he researched, clouds and light and color, and so that with attentiveness we can look at anything and see more of what is being guided. And what Goethe did, is what Rudolf Steiner did in his development of his philosophy of anthroposophy. There are many people whose work is now really from what we give us attention and intention. Healing, a lot of healing work comes out of it. So the last 20 plus years, I've been teaching that, how the given goes through its transformation by what is not given, which is what I do or what we do when we give our attention. It's not part of the world. So our attention is not in the world. It's coming into the world through us. And then it evolves us. It brings us into the present, but it also can bring us into the future. A sense of higher states of awareness. And then we could participate in creation from the very beginning of things.
Wow.
So I have a lot of original research and work going on, not, where people who are interested in the social questions, the ecological questions, economic questions, how do we begin? So I love another generation to come and contribute to that field. It's amazing. And the arts are just one amazing way to refine. So do we have time for a short exercise?
Oh yeah, I think so.
And for those of you who can, and others may not be in a place where they can do this exercise, but for those who can, it's a very simple process. We call it the portal exercise or the door exercise. And I learned it being called the door exercise. And it will require just, being comfortable where you are for a little bit and closing your eyes and bringing your attention to just a soft awareness. Just a soft awareness. It doesn't require much effort to do. And to bring into the imagination a door, any door, a door that you're familiar with. And just look at the door, just see the door. And bring your attention to as many details of the door as possible. So now that you're seeing the door, look at all the details that you can see in whatever order you choose. Just closer and closer attention to the details of the door. If the door goes away, just bring it back or choose another one. There's no wrong in it. Just keep creating the door and looking at the details. And just take a last couple moments of observation of the door. And come back to our shared space. How was that for you? Can anyone share their experience?
Calming.
Can you say anything about the door or your experience with the door?
My doors. Sorry.
Please go.
Well, the door I saw didn't want to get closed. It kept to be open. It was a white door. And what I tried to do, or I find myself doing, was that I tried to see the door from, well, I saw the door from sort of from the side, and I tried to bring that image straight forward to me. And when you said we could get closer to the details, I found myself incredibly close. And yeah, so I sort of realized my own position. Next to that door in front of me. Yeah, I don't know.
No, that's clear. Thank you. Someone else?
I kind of found it hard to make the door stay. In the beginning, when we're supposed to look at the door, I could see it clearly, and when we're supposed to look at the details, the harder I tried to look, the more it disappeared, the whole thing. And then you said we could make the image reappear, and it kind of did, but it never got to the details of what it was to me.
Yeah, thank you.
I saw all different kinds of doors inside the house of my parents, and that kind of made me realize how important those childhood memories maybe are. So I was also not able to stay with one door and focus all too much on it, and I didn't start from further away and go then into the details, but the other way around, I I had details popping up, and then when I couldn't, then I realized I couldn't go any further than, and maybe not make a whole out of the details. So I went to look at another door, and that was all very much connected with the feeling of maybe the handle, or the kind of emotions I connect with those doors. Very interesting.
Yes, very much so. Yes, thank you. Any others would like to share? So here is a quite, I mean, I've done this exercise so countless of times, and it's different each time. But over many years, I'm able to go exactly where I left the door before. Now I can just quickly jump into my door and go into details. But it's gotten so far in the development of the exercise that I don't have a door anymore. I just have a portal. I just come to a place now where there is just me. Because who created the door? I did. So as soon as I said door, I'm aware of the I that created it. Because I've worked so much with the door. I mean, I can go back and say a door, but the metamorphosis is so fast that as soon as I say door, the concept, and then the percept, the door, the concept, and then the architect. So here am I, the architect of the imagination of the door became the experience because of it. Now, where you share from will say the most amazing part of the exercise is, I love it, that part where you are saying, oh, I'm having a hard time getting the door. Oh, I love that. Because that means, wow, the exercise is so real. It's still, for me, I have to find other exercises now because that one doesn't work for me so much anymore. It's done what it's supposed to do for me, even though I love it. But I teach it because I just love the communication, what you just shared, to hear. And then I could, say, wow, I'll do it again and do it again and do it for the next 400 times and see what happens. Because you can just do it anytime, anywhere for 5-10 minutes, because there's no correct way other than create an imagination of a door and look at the details. That's it. But here is the power of imaginative knowledge. So where's the door occurring in imagination? And then I have to find inspiration to go into the details. And then intuition to hold the door at the level of awareness that gives the door meaning. So the experience, sometimes feelings come up, and then the feelings take the doors away because I have all this experience and connections to them. Or the mental awareness says, okay, the door is not supposed to be closed, or the door is not supposed to be open, the door is not supposed to be this color or that color. So we have a lot of information about what the door should be or should not be. And then we have to figure out, am I at the emotional level of the door, the mental level of the door, psychological level of the door, Because all of that is in the imagination of creating a door. Which one? One from childhood, one from adulthood, one from, a place where there are happy memories, a place where there's other kinds of memories. The conceptual world, which lives within consciousness, it's really hard to change. So when people say, let's go out and change the world, not without being able to open the door or close the door or keep the door in awareness, because we have to have a conceptual understanding of our will to create change. Because as soon as I think I did something, and then I look back and realize, wow, it's still the same thing, or I try to do something and all these feelings come up. Well, how do I control my feelings when I have to do difficult work? So as artists, oh wow, you're doing two things: creating beautiful art and creating yourself as a aesthetic. Someone who appreciates being able to hold this creative tension between the inner and outer realities, and keep choosing to be the artist, keep choosing to refine and refine and refine what I'm doing. But it's easier to put it, to do something in the world where things remain. When I paint it or sculpt it, it remains. But in imagination, I have to keep going back to the source. And who's the source? You are. I have to remember there's no door if I'm not giving intention for it to be. And as soon as the door goes away, I go back, okay, I have to go back and create it because I am the door that I'm creating. It's coming from me. Not memory, really. The memory starts it, but the activity that holds it is the I. That says there is no door if I'm not doing something with my power of intention. But it's an exercise, and the only way to become aware of that which creates is to transform the creation. Stay with the creative process, and then the creator reveals. So thank you for trusting to do it, and I hope you find enough interest to say, I want to go the next steps, because there's so many next steps, so many, and each would be in your own timing and capacity. No one could be where they shouldn't be with it, and it's the way, one way to school the consciousness.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so happy to meet you all, and hopefully there will be some time in the future when meeting in person will happen again. I'm feeling this year I could probably get back into my travels. It's been 2 years of just this kind of interaction. But,
yeah,
I love hearing what people do with their lives and how lives are moving. So, Tobias, thank you so much for organizing this space for us to be together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Susie, I miss you. Hopefully we'll see each other soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Longing to, really.
Yes, I log it too. Please give my love to everyone in the friendship spaces there.
Really. Take care now.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good to
Thank
meet you.
you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
bringing these insights. Yeah, you're welcome.
See you.
Thank you.
See you soon. Yes, take care.